In 2022, a pair of former ball players and a talented young broadcaster were tasked with creating a college football podcast. These men promptly escaped into the mountains of West Virginia and got to work. If you want top-level football analysis, off-topic stories, and locker room humor, you're in the right place. You are In the Gun.
In the Gun, episode 25. It's time for an Oklahoma Sooners size preview here on your new favorite WVU football podcast. I'm Wes Uhler. I've got the best teammates in the business, the runaway beer truck, number 35 in your programs, but number one in your hearts, Owen Schmitt, the signal caller, Jed Drenning, of course. And we've got a special guest today joining us for the first two segments of the show. Our friend, your friend, handsome, tubby, man of gold, Big Daddy Mariner, our WVU video insider. Sean, this is the part where I do the host thing and how's everybody doing, and everybody speaks their piece for a second. I'm going to come to you here first. How we doing, Big Daddy?
Good. I like that we're running the experiment to see how many people will instantly click off of the podcast or fast forward to the YouTube part where it's just the three of you. I like that we're
double
just
tubby
it off here.
Dude, this is clickbait, son.
100%, but in the worst possible way.
Sean, you bring up our average here, all right? I mean,
and wait,
we got a lot of twos on this video here, right? But when you pop on, we turn into tens, baby. I'll tell you.
I'm a negative number up on here.
This episode of ITG brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Folks, basketball is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. You always find the latest odds, team matchup information, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. And as your continued source for all sports wagering information, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. It's always the fastest and easiest way to bet your favorite sports and events, whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, MMA, college sports, tennis, boxing, and even golf. So head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE when you sign up to receive your awards. That's BLEAV, BetOnline, where the game starts. I tell you what, I think I could do that in my sleep by this point, but shout out BetOnline, baby.
You already got me thinking. When he just Dusty, everybody knows and loves Dusty.
Oh, Dusty.
Right?
Okay. Oh, Dusty.
Dusty,
the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
The American Dream, Dusty. Everybody used to get on Dusty about, Dusty, you got to get on a diet. You got to lose some weight. You got to crash down. You got to do this. You got to thin out. And he's like, I put some thought into this. Now, why would I do that? And we're like, well, Dusty, what do you mean? Why would you do that? You got to lose some weight. And he said, no. He said, see, I'm a good looking fat guy. All right. But if I lose weight, I wouldn't be a good looking average guy. He said, I'm realistic enough to recognize, look at me. I'm a pretty good looking fat guy. You know, if a girl's after a fat guy, I can get that girl, but I can't get a girl just being an average guy. I'm not a good looking average guy. He thought it through, but you made me think of that, Big Daddy.
He and I are meant.
Wow. Burn. Oh, not at all. Double tubby tonight. I love it.
Okay. See, I was worried there, Sean. You for a second, you had that like frozen look on your face, and I didn't know.
Listen, you forget I did this. I know how to do the.
Oh, I tell you what. Headlines here as we get rolling. It is the Veterans Day military appreciation game, I should say, Saturday at home at Mountaineer Field. Veterans Day on Friday. Of course, at ITG here, we want to thank all the men and women that have served this country, that have given us the freedom and the opportunity that we enjoy. It was election day earlier across the country. We wouldn't have things like that if it weren't for the people that went before us, and many of whom who paid the ultimate sacrifice. So we wanted to make sure to mention that to get going here. Jed, I think he's wearing a camo shirt, but I can't see him. Oh, yeah. I'm not positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got him.
Absolutely.
Right. I don't know if you guys.
It's not really military camo, but thanks, Jed.
It's the camo I had. All right.
Yeah.
That's the sitting in a
thought
tree.
that counts.
That's the
Tiger
sitting in a tree
midnight
stand drinking a
camo,
dozen Bush Lights camo is what that is right there.
free.
Boom.
Yeah.
And listen, I don't know if you guys can't give this away. Maybe it's just assumed at this point, but blink twice if we're going to wear the American flag decals on our helmets Saturday.
Ooh, have not confirmed yet. I got to keep them open. Have not confirmed yet. However, flyover Saturday can be pretty sweet. A lot of military recognitions, including a Woody Williams action. I'm really excited about that. And
nice.
Quick shout out. I do want to say, Jed, I don't know if you've watched it yet. If anybody has the chance, go watch Will Schoonover's interview from Tuesday.
I noticed
they brought him in.
I haven't seen it. I love that they're doing that.
16 minutes, I believe. They brought him in because Will is a veteran, did multiple tours of duty over in Afghanistan, came here to play football. He's a Moorfield guy. Reed Williams is his hero. He talks about it in the interview. Unreal dude that I've got the pleasure of getting to know. And some of the stories he tells for the media are incredible. The stories he tells you outside of the media, even better. So a veteran, I do want to recognize. Everybody go and check that out from wherever it was posted.
Baseball,
because it was
Big
awesome.
Daddy, with my best friend's son at Pot State. I mean, he is a fascinating guy.
Yeah. Baseball, rugby, football, sniper, plane jumper, like.
Speaking of plane jumper, the greatest photograph maybe in history was taken a few years ago this weekend at Mountaineer Field, way atop Mountaineer Field. So hopefully we get another one like that.
Yes.
I think you guys have seen the picture that I'm talking about. Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Out of the plane as they did the flyover with the flag flying. Man, it was so cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. We'll have to wait and see if we get a equally as enjoyable photo this Saturday. Military Appreciation Day, Veterans Day Friday. Thanks again to everyone who has served this country. Gentlemen, we have a member of Mountaineer Nation, a former teammate of Owen's, Pat McAfee, who has gone a little viral here with a bucket shot. All right. Of course, Pat, we all know, former kicker, punter with the Mountaineers, with the Indianapolis Colts in the National Football League. Well, every once in a while, he likes to still show off the leg, and he went viral calling his shot and dropping one in a bucket earlier this week. We'll take a look at that video right now. Big O, pretty good stuff there from your former teammate. I mean, I tell you what, you still got any tricks like that up your sleeve?
Not that impressive. I can still chug a hellacious beer. I think that's something that it'll never leave. I don't think that skill. But no, I was scrolling through Twitter and I seen it and I said, golly, this dude is just a freak show. He did have like a comment like oh, by the way, congrats, Pat. They're having a baby.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How about that?
So heck yeah, good job from them. I know they've gone through some trials and tribulations there. So excellent way to stick the nose to the grindstone and get lucky there.
Done.
Yeah, get her done. So I'm happy for him there. But man, he put a comment that said how many times it took him to do that. And quite honestly, it might have not been more than 5. I mean, he might have hit it on the first shot, but it might not have been more than 5. I mean, he's pretty deadly accurate with his legs. So what a cool thing to see anyways.
Wasn't it some kind of promotion where you were supposed to guess?
Yeah, you were supposed to guess like how many times he did it or whatever.
Gotcha.
He said that was 62 to 65 yards.
Yep, 62 to 65 yards.
Where he started the sequence to yes. I mean,
yeah.
Are you kidding?
And it wasn't one of those, fake ping pong shot deals where he kicks it and it goes out of screen and someone drops it in the bucket. I mean, that was a legit garbage can from 65 yards out. And man, you can see the ball kind of arc to the it starts off left and then spirals to the right.
It's impressive.
His
angle was intense.
Yeah, he's one of the he's one of the best.
Yeah.
He's one of the best.
And I get like that doesn't leave you, but how long has it been since he's played?
Oh yeah. Well, and that's a 65
a
yarder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a 65 yarder. That's a
you
tough
can
kick.
Stay in shape, but doing that, you're not getting game reps doing that. Like
I guess it hasn't quite been a decade, but it's been been a while.
It's been a while.
Knowing Pat, I do
5-6 years.
you do see a lot of his content. Sometimes he'll just be out there kicking the ball because I'm sure. I mean, dude, when you love something like that, it's hard to not do it anymore. But I know he's had complications. He's had multiple surgeries due to kicking, just the stress and strain it puts on the ligaments, joints. But wow,
Do the math.
Excellent stuff.
62 to 65 yards from the can. That's basically a 50-plus yard punt in game measurements into a can. Right? That's
crazy.
Well, and he led the league, I want to say, his punt average, it was somewhere like around, I think it was 49 or something like that, 49.5, 49.8, maybe. I don't want to
punter of the decade, baby.
Yeah, I mean, it was nuts. I mean, he was Indy's guy. He was the franchise dude there. So from Splashtown to to the dang player of the decade there for him. So he's done some great things, and man, I can't wait to see what he comes out with next, because it seems like it just keeps getting higher.
Yeah, that's well said. No doubt. He's just getting started in the big picture of things.
Yep.
As we continue, as we start to wrap up headlines here, Mr. Signal Caller, we had another firing, another cleaning of house of an athletic department, one that we used to be familiar with and one that has some familiar names attached to it. South Florida, what's going on down there with the Bulls?
Well, they jettisoned their head coach. They're going to coach the string out. The staff is, of course, former Mountaineer assistant, a guy that Owen and I have both known forever, and Travis Trickett was their OC. He left here a year ago to be part of that rebuild, or that effort to rebuild South Florida. They were a program with some problems. Defensively, I think they were dead last in the country in total defense. So they, as Rich might say, they couldn't play dead in a Western on the defensive side of the ball. But offensively, he was trying to get them to score some points, and oftentimes they did, but it was tough to keep up. And so a guy that did a great job here and was doing an effective job there in terms of rebuilding that offense. You know, he got the transfer and Bohannon in from Baylor in the offseason, and he got banged up, so he's been playing with a backup. But it's interesting in that the difference between South Florida and UCF. I mean, we all remember the Jim Leavitt teams that Owen played against. I mean, South Florida at one point was number 2 in the country back in those days. Okay. That was what they peaked at. And now, and it was just a handful of years ago, they were in the top 15, top 20, you know, like a 6-7-0 start when they had, the Flowers kid at quarterback, but they've fallen quickly. They haven't kept pace with UCF. I think the differences are, because there's a lot of parallels between those programs. They're always compared. Central Florida has made the commitment to build an on-campus stadium. Okay. Yeah. And they're all in from a football standpoint. That you guys can appreciate what a difference that makes. South Florida is still kind of limping out to borrow the Buck Stadium to play their home games. And it's not conducive to the kind of atmosphere you need for a successful college program. Central Florida is. And so Central Florida is winning all the prizes and getting all the acclaim and being invited to the larger conferences. And looks like they're kind of leaving. Central Florida's kind of leaving South Florida behind, but that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Go ahead, Owen. Oh, and I was just going to say, I think, back in the Big East days, I don't think any of us would have thought that Central Florida would have lapped South Florida like this.
Yeah. Never. I never would have thought that. But like you said about the whole sharing stadiums deal, you would have wished they would have kind of branched off of that, because there's, I think even with Pittsburgh and Pitt, it would still be nice to have your own stadium. You know what I mean? There's just something about it.
Feels like your own. It's more nostalgic.
Yeah.
Say what you want about Nippert, okay? But we played at both Paul Brown Stadium against Cincinnati and at Nippert against Cincinnati, right, Big Daddy? And there's a huge, massive difference from an environment standpoint. It's a much richer environment if you're after some sort of nostalgia or the passion of the fan base or the student body. I mean, when you get on campus and walk through the neighborhood, some people call that Beirut, to get down into a Nippert Stadium. I mean, it's so different. I mean, and I think there's something to be said for that, though, and I really do. And of course, Central Florida are Gus Malzahn's down there with our old buddy Herb Hand, and so they're heading in a good direction as they prepare for Big 12 play just in less than 1 year, as strange as that is to think.
Nippert's a perfect example, Jed. When I worked out in Columbus, we would go down, since it's an hour and a half down to Cincinnati, we'd go cover Cincinnati games against a variety of opponents, and it was give me Nippert all day, every day over one game against even a bigger opponent like us when we played them at Paul Brown. It's incredible.
I enjoy Nippert, yeah.
Yeah.
The one time I went to watch us play Cincinnati on the road was, I don't know if we've played at Paul Brown multiple times or if it was just this once, but it was the Ian Smith blocked the field goal to secure victory at the end. That was my lone road trip to watch the Mountaineers play in Cincinnati. We did that. It was my sophomore year at school, I think.
Zach Collaros blew his knee out down by the goal line, and Munchie had to come in. Yeah.
I wish that would have been a Nippert, because then I could have spoken to that atmosphere that you guys were talking about. But it was a great game. I was not complaining, certainly, whenever Ian Smith blocked that field goal. We're gonna take a break here. We'll come back on the other side with Sean in just a minute. Before we go, I wanted to remind everybody, if you're looking for some merch, all right, holidays are right around the corner. If you need some gifts for your loved ones, itgfootball.com. We've got our shop set up on there. We've got shirts, we've got polos, we've got hoodies, and we've got hats. The Runaway Beer Truck himself is wearing one right now. If you're watching along on YouTube, we've got that dad style hat that Owen's wearing. We've also got trucker hats on there, polos, hoodies, t-shirts. Like I said, itgfootball.com. Click on the shop link if you need some gifts for some loved ones. Get the little kids t-shirts. Let them know that Schmitt happens, all right? That's how you spread holiday cheer. When we come back in just a minute, Oklahoma Roundtable. Memories from years past against Oklahoma, the good, the bad, the Fiesta Bowl, some of the pain and some of those big moments as well, too, over the last decade. We'll touch on it all when we return. Wes Uhler, Owen Schmitt, Jed Drenning, our buddy Sean Mariner. You are in the gun.
I'm talking with J.R. Toothman of Toothman Ford. J.R., everybody knows a lot of pro athletes buy from you. What's the secret?
Just like Will Greer, future Hall of Famer Frank Gore, James Washington, and many more pros, these guys have financial advisors that are always looking out for them to save time and money, and that's why they always shop at Toothman Ford.
And what if you're like us regular folks that don't have people giving us advice?
You don't need a financial advisor. Toothman Ford will save you time and money no matter who you are. Plus, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy from us. Visit toothmanford.com and get a quick, instant cash offer.
That sounds like a score to me.
That's right. And as always, we'll take anything in trade from chicken wings to Super Bowl rings.
Toothman Ford's got a lot of fans. Here's another one, Dallas Cowboys QB Will Greer.
This is Will Greer, former West Virginia and current NFL quarterback. And cars really do cost less in Grafton at Toothman Ford.
That's a fact, Will. Thanks. You can shop online anytime at toothmanford.com.
Let's go, Mountaineer fans. You're tuned in to In the Gun with Wes, the Runaway Beer Truck, and the Signal Caller.
ITG back here. Time for a little Oklahoma roundtable, an open forum discussion, if you will, amongst the four of us, from fan perspective, player perspective, coverage perspective. We've got it all. I mean, gentlemen, it really does start with that Fiesta Bowl, right? I mean, I know Jed can probably speak back to when Jeff Hostetler and the boys went down to Norman and broke some Sooner hearts. All right, I'm hip to it, but that was about a decade before I was around. Maybe not quite as long for Owen and Sean, but pretty darn close. Where do you want to? You know what, Jed? You're always good with this kind of stuff. Where do you want to start here? Do we want to start with the Fiesta Bowl and Owen? Do you want to go back to the Hostetler days? What are you thinking here?
Let's kind of do this. I mean, the only thing I'd say is the 82 game. That was a week before I attended my first Mountaineer game in person. It was a week before Haas against Boomer Esiason, and on September 18th of 82. Me and my little league team, the Davis Thomas Rams, were laying behind the end zone as Rich Hollins caught the game winner from Haas to beat the Terps. But that game in 82, that I don't know if we'd be having these conversations. I don't know if this podcast would exist. That might sound like hyperbole, but that truly was the game. In other words, we seized the momentum of that bowl victory coming off the previous season, big bowl victory, and heading into the 82 season, we were heavy underdogs against the number 9 team in the country. And Barry Switzer, best winning percentage in the country. Dupree played in that game. I mean, all the names were there. All right. It was 100 degrees. They jumped on us 14-0 right out of the gate. So everything was going according to Oklahoma's script. And the next thing you know, we just keep clawing back and clawing back and clawing back. And we scored. It's 14-7. Score. It's 14. We make our way back to 14-13. And then in the final seconds of the first half, it's become in vogue that a signature move of bold coaching is to go for a timely onside kick, right? Well, that was the first one I saw in my life. Right before halftime, West Virginia, Don Nehlen's Mountaineers kicked an onside kick, recovered it, Haas to Daryl Miller in the final seconds of the first half. We take the lead 20-14 at halftime, and they are absolutely shell-shocked. They don't know what happened to them. They blinked and it was 14-0. Now it's 20-14. We go on 41-27, the best call in the game from a radio standpoint, because I remember more about the radio than the TV. You can go on YouTube and find that game. But Jack's call when Curlin Beck busted that last one to seal it in the final couple minutes, that's worth going on YouTube just to find that. But that win in so many ways kind of broke the glass ceiling for West Virginia, right? I mean, that was the moment that we played one of those brands in a marquee game with a lot of eyes on it, and we proved we could win one of those games. Okay. So I would argue in some way, everything that's come since was kind of the platform or stage was set in some measure from what happened that day. And then, of course, we didn't play them again until Owen, take the floor. I would say the team you faced. I just did a podcast today with two former OU players. Okay. I think they're still scared of Owen, the way they talk about it, I mean, there's just such a reverence. They speak specifically Owen, but that team. And I told those guys, I said, look, I think that matchup in that Fiesta Bowl, I truly think they were the best team in college football. They were ranked number 3, but I think Oklahoma, when that regular season ended, going into bowl season, was playing the best football in America. And that's what Owen and that team faced, Owen.
That should have been the national title game.
Yeah, there was a lot of hype around them. Before that game, there was a lot of discredit for us. We all saw the famous poster that they plastered on ESPN, basically 84% of America. It was like everything was in red except for us, West Virginia. And I know previously that week, a player got suspended because he got caught like stealing something, and that was like one of their big D linemen, I believe. But there was a lot of hype around them, not so much hype around us. We kind of screwed the pooch, losing the pit there and dashing our hopes of any national championship tries, which was a bummer. And even them were talking a lot of smack in, the kind of lead up to the game. Hadn't really ever seen a team with that much razzle dazzle before the game, like coming out there with the covered wagon and everything, and
stupid wagon.
Yeah, and at the coin toss, you could hear them talking smack to us over the loudspeaker. If you listen to the game copy, you can kind of hear the chatter that's going on there.
Ref Mike picks it up.
Yep. And man, we went out there and played them tough, and it was close for the first half there. Really nothing was going on. And I think I ended up sparking mine in the second quarter. I think it was something like that before the half, something like that.
Yeah. Who was the first guy in the end zone? Go back and watch that, Owen. Pat hands the ball off to you. And unless I'm mistaken, despite dropping a couple steps after the handoff, he's off screen, right? And yet I'm pretty sure he was the first guy.
He was one of the first guys to hug me when I scored. Absolutely. That guy had to give me a little shove too after I crossed the goal line. Right. So, I mean, being a fat boy, I said, you got to get up. You got to get up right now, brother, because that ain't cool, man. And it was awesome. And it really ignited us, I think, just the team in general and the fans down there as well. Just ignited a spark and got us really fired up to go. But and then it kind of snowballed for them. They battled back a little bit, and then we just kind of ran away with it in the second half. But what an incredible victory! So much adversity, just with the drama, right? So much drama that was that happened in the sequence leading up to the game. Even like getting to the game, we were late because of traffic. So much for the police escort. Really, yeah, it was like
the train wreck.
what's the point of having a dang police escort if they ain't going to move people out of the way, man? You know what I'm saying? But so just so thrown out of the routine, you know, and then Stu gives a speech and we go out there business as usual and with a chip on our shoulder, and at least try to show that we represented what we were there that night, and coming out on top with a victory. But I mean, what a hell of a time. I mean, they were big bad Oklahoma, but we were such a physical team, and we had speed, obviously, but I don't think people really you can't really, I guess, get it on film, but we just did not quit. We were so well trained. We had Mike Barwis, the nastiest strength coach trainer, in my opinion, at the time, and just built us a mental mentality and a physical mentality of, we're never going to quit, never going to stop, and just brought the physicality of that game and literally dumbfounded the Sooners.
The 3-3-5 threw them for a loop.
Yeah.
You could tell from the jump. Bradford was not Bradford. He didn't know what he was doing. Because didn't Quentin have that pick in the end zone?
Yeah, we had a couple. Yeah. A couple turnovers too. And it's funny to see the players that were in that game.
Yeah.
That played on Sunday. Yep. I mean, it was
Sam Bradford made a lot of money. He got
the last big contract before the rookie cap. Mm-hmm. He was the last quarterback that got those old contracts before the rookie cap.
A million memories from that game, Owen. Obviously, Pat throwing the punches, but for me, Tito catching the pass and then coming off the field crying is just an absolute memory forever.
Well, I mean, it's our last game. Yeah. You know what I mean? There was so much going on, and we had put so much effort into that. And I'm not just, when I say we, I mean everybody on the team. Those workouts were brutal. If anybody came to Morgantown and saw what we were about in that time in the era of football, we worked hard. Obviously, we worked a little too hard because we were, slightly practicing, I guess, a little bit longer than we were supposed to, but big deal. I would never care about that because we won. I don't think anybody would ever have a problem with it, because that's what it took to win, right? You have to outwork your opponent. And so many times, other than not, that's what games came down to. But so many special moments, like you said. I mean, just it's hard to encapsulate everything that really happened that night because so many guys made plays, right? So many emotions because, especially for me, I know for Mark and the rest of the seniors. I mean, last game, we're playing on a mega huge stage. Unfortunately, we should have been, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but, regrets or not. But what a hell of a time to be a Mountaineer.
I was 17 years old. That night, I thought you guys saved the program. And I mean, maybe, Jed, you mentioned being hyperbolic a minute ago. Maybe you did. I mean, from everything that transpired on December 1st, 2007, to missing out on that opportunity. And then a week later, Rich is gone when it just felt like, okay, he's going to stay. We're going to sustain this. This is not just a blip on the radar. This is not just a brief period of success. He turned down a la frickin' Bama. He's here to stay. He's not going anywhere. And then not only do we lose that game to Pitt, and then Rich is gone, and I was, 17 years old and in that kind of prime of your sports. I mean, you know what I mean? I lived and died with everything Mountaineers. I cried my eyes out in the stands at the Pitt game. I was pretty close to crying when I turned on Sports Center that one morning and Rich Rodriguez was wearing all that Michigan gear and he was in maize and blue instead of gold and blue. Oh, God, it still makes me want to vomit. I went to bed that night and slept Big O, maybe the best I've ever slept in my life, because I was like, we're good. Program saved. We're going to be all right. We're going to be all right.
Oh, so yeah. And we continued that success. You know what I mean? We really did. It's some moves were made, obviously, by WVU that they thought were the best for the program, which kind of led us down this path to the Big 12. And unfortunately now that's, we're here where we're at right now. But I mean, unfortunately, programs go through ups and downs for a very, in my opinion, for a strong decade, we had a very relevant program.
What got us it in large part the seat at the table that we now have. I mean, as competitive and difficult as this league is, we'd otherwise be UConn potentially, just left behind, completely left behind financially and otherwise. And I think the success that you guys had parlayed into more success. I mean, think about it. We were preseason top 5 after you guys won that bowl game, come back for Pat's senior year in 08. And, you never know the impact that your Sugar Bowl has on winning the Fiesta Bowl, which has on recruiting. Do we not land the Miramar kids? Does Gino go elsewhere? Does Stedman go elsewhere? Does Tavon go elsewhere? Which, kind of played a major role in what happened in the Orange Bowl against Clemson. I mean, these things have a way of connecting and running downstream, So, what you guys accomplished that night, I don't think it ended that night. It really didn't. But just like what Coach Nealon and Jeff Hostetler and that team accomplished in '82. I remember, Big Daddy, the first time we went back to Oklahoma as a Big 12 member in 2013, I felt like I was, working a West Virginia Dream Camp. Because if you remember, they honored Haas and Coach Nealon. There was something going on there. Well, on the team charter, I was seated between the two of them. Felt bad for those guys, but I'm sitting here thinking I'm on a charter plane between Haas and Coach Nealon on our way to Oklahoma. I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
When I get to dive into the archives for different stuff, I remember the '82 over the projects we've done over the year. I've gone back and watched a lot of that stuff. They did a whole feature on that game. They did a music video to The Gambler.
Yes, you guys YouTube that.
Absolutely incredible.
Somebody from Morgantown wrote that.
Yeah. And the only reason I know about Curlin Beck and that is because The Draw got covered so much. They did like a whole 5-minute segment on that play called The Draw, and they talked about it. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah.
All right. Before we wrap this up and let our buddy Sean get out of here because he's been kind enough to give us way too much of his time. This was fun. This was sunshine and rainbows. Now, the other side of this, briefly, Big Daddy. Which hurt worse, 2012 when Tavon went for 572 yards and we lost to Oklahoma by a point.
His first start at running back.
Yes.
Or 2018 when they called TJ Simmons for blocking too hard out of bounds. It was a 14, and then Will Greer scooped 6 the next play, 14-point swing in a game that we lost by 3 points.
It's 2018 by Country Mile. Listen, 2012 was incredible. That atmosphere was lights out. Stedman's game in that gets lost completely because of what Tavon did. Stedman had an incredible game. Yes. Jed, I don't know if you remember or not, Dana would talk to us post-game about that, and the reason they ran Tavon so much is because he noticed something with their secondary where
what they were doing, Big Daddy.
Everything was just Joey Madsen. They would just let him get all the way to the second level, and it was just him against the safety, and he would just go hug the guy, and Tavon would just watch his hips and run the opposite direction.
Oh, and they didn't have a linebacker on the field.
Zero.
They literally, I'm not sure. You have nickel and you have dime. So I guess you'd be in a quarter defense because they added yet another DB. They had a DB playing Mike linebacker. So we were dinged up at running back. So, necessity is the mother of invention. But because of Tavon's skill set, they're like, why not? Let's roll the dice and give this a try. So it was his first start at running back, and he sets a host of records, school records and otherwise. And the two things I remember was that DB playing Mike backer in their base defense. I don't mean in passing situations. I mean in their base defense. And then I remember at halftime, Dana telling the staff and to some extent the offensive players, hey, we're going to keep giving it to the little guy and see if they can stop it.
Yep.
And that's literally what he said. And you know what? They didn't stop him. The problem was we didn't stop them. But to your point, Sean, a lot of people forget Steady B had 4 touchdowns that night. In this shootout, but we were one stop. Every time I see Kenny Stills make a play in the NFL,
I hate it.
That's all I can think of.
Anytime I see overtime, that's the only person I think of forever.
Friggin' Landry Jones.
But the 18 game, it was like, here's the way I view that. Like, Owen, you've been in as many film studies more than I have, even, okay? But it was the type of play that TJ made. Like, I know people have ridiculed him for that, but what people don't understand, when you grow up culturally, when you grow up within the sport,
Yep,
from the time
that's
you're
football.
in to the time,
That's
in
football.
other words, you're
Play to the
coached.
whistle.
Hey, it's in the movies. Look at The Blind Side. One of the famous scenes, he blocked the guy into the stands. In other words, when you do that in a film session around your teammates, oh, and that's, that's one of the loudest cheers you get. Look at that. You're blocking him all the way out of bounds. That's how you do it. That's 110%. You're not easing up. That's not on you. That's on him.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, hey, you got to be smarter than that. You got to ease up. Well, wait,
No,
the time you're 8 years old, you're coached to do that.
That same play happens. That same play
warned.
happens once a week in the conference, and they never call it.
Oh, yes.
Never.
Well,
call
the
it.
issue is this: people are treating it like it's a cheap shot out of bounds. No, it is not. If you get a guy on the sled from the hash mark and drive him into the 10th row in the stands without losing engagement, that's good. That is football.
That's called getting wore out.
That's getting wore out. And apparently, it was illegal to wear somebody out in that game. That drives me crazy.
Well, it was illegal for us. It was illegal for us to knock Oklahoma out of the playoff picture because the conference needed it.
Because if we win the week before, I have said a million times, 2018, we could do a full documentary on that team because losing at Oklahoma State, if we win that game, we're automatically in the title game.
Yeah, we're going
up 17 in the fourth quarter in that Oklahoma State game.
Got
31-14
Oklahoma at home. So all the odds are against you, and things never go your.
It would have been a rematch, Big Daddy, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, it would have been exactly.
We played Oklahoma twice in a row, so
People say, well, TJ had to have been warned before that. They don't just call that. You get warned before they call that. Hey, he was not warned from my knowledge because I don't think you run somebody out of bounds that badly twice in one game. That kid's never playing again.
And I know that's a decade from the
wearing somebody out. That's what
it's wearing somebody out. And I'll tell you what. If you didn't think that when we were on a toss sweep play, that my whole goal was to drive that corner, literally to hit a coach who was standing on the sideline by his own player. Yep. That was, I mean,
these people have actually said, and I've had people that didn't play say, well, no, you should be paying attention and block him right up until you get to the boundary. And then I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
That's like this too. A guy's running. I'm in the pros, right? I'm running down on a punt return, right? Guy pulls up because he pulls his hamstring. Okay. So I'm thinking like, this guy's done. You know what I mean? He's like going towards the sideline. This freaking dude hobbles off the sideline like he's out of bounds and then gets in on the tackle. I'm like, and my coach he ripped me. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how is that not a penalty?
How's that not a penalty?
But hey, Owen, block him right up to the boundary and then look down and say, oh, the boundary's here. I'm going to stop now.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't, it's like literally the guy literally pulled up. He's like, oh, dude, my hamstring. And push him out of bounds. And I'll go find somebody else. And this guy comes out. I mean, that's the type of situation that ends up happening though. Right. Yep. Like people don't listen. If you've never played the game before, people are trying to hurt you. Okay. If you don't think that's the case, you've never played on a winning team. You've been on flag football your whole life. Right. So that's the point. And I'm not saying they're trying to hurt you. Like, hey, I'm trying to end this dude's career, but if he doesn't play the next play, I did my job. So
not in an illegal sense. They're trying to make you feel it. They're trying to make you feel it every play.
This is a violent game, dude. Collision sport. Yeah, I'm trying to make sure that you quit. All right. So my job's easier the rest of the game. And we've talked about that before, just against Pitt. That
HP Blades.
Junior. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I don't know. It's unfortunate that call happened because, it just completely turned around the game.
I mean, football is an incredibly
14-point swing.
To Owen's point, physical, violent game. I mean, I used to stand there and watch people do all kind of physical, violent things when I was. Now I didn't do any, but I was watching other people do these physical, violent things, and I can attest to the fact it's physical and violent. I just try to stay away from it. But
dude, you wonder how some people get up the next day because they were in a car wreck. I mean. I mean,
they were in a car wreck like 20 times,
multiple times. Yeah. That's why I've always loved that sports science show. That, I mean, literally, they used to say an ISO play, two guys 10 yards apart, running as fast as they can into each other is like getting in a car wreck at 40 miles an hour. Yeah. Okay. So you run 20, 25 of those a game, and then that's for a whole season and then a whole career. I mean, what do you think that does to somebody? You know what I mean? So just the damage alone, but it's a violence
fullbacks.
Yeah, it's a violent sport, man.
It's a real violent sport. What Owen, what did we say a couple weeks ago on the podcast? We said playing football is like being in a bunch of car crashes. Playing hockey is like getting stabbed every once in a while, right? Right? We were talking about that guy with the bloody lip, that hockey player with the bloody lip. It's like getting stabbed. You play football, you're in a car crash. You play hockey, you get stabbed every once in a while. We got to get to a break here. This was a lot of fun. Sean, thank you for the time as always, buddy.
Thanks, brother.
I want to leave you guys with this. I want to do a couple quick hitters before I go.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma game has given us Carl Joseph murdering a wide receiver out of bounds.
Yes.
Oklahoma game has given us, was it 2017? Will's hurt. We go there. Baker Mayfield suspended for the first series. Yes. I had salaciously told everybody that it doesn't matter. Kyler Murray's going to take the first handoff for 80 yards for a touchdown. He took the first handoff of the game, play for 78 yards. Baker came in and they scored a touchdown directly after. So a sad note, remember 2000, I think it was 13, Jed, Doug Rigg, one of the scariest hits I've ever seen on the sideline.
Yes.
That one shook me up.
Game, yeah.
And then obviously the wagon tipping in 2019.
Yes.
How can we ever forget? Absolute.
And that
thanks. Everybody's okay. I've come to find out that they were worried that people were hurt. There have been potentially some legal ramifications from that, from people that I knew that I did not know before. But watching it happen in real time, I've never felt more country and justified when I watched. I was right by the tunnel. I watched it come out. It started to turn, and I was like, "That's going to tip." I could just tell. By the way, I've seen a hay wagon.
I've seen a hay wagon tip a couple times. That going to tip.
She going to tip.
Carl Joseph hit, Big Daddy. The Carl hit on D.D. Westbrook. I still swear I looked down and I'm shocked there wasn't blood on my shirt because it was like 10 feet from me. I looked down thinking, and I
now we have targeting in college football.
Yes.
Carl Joseph killed a man in Norman, Oklahoma. Let's go get a win on Saturday and send those bums back to Norman, Oklahoma. Sean, thanks, buddy. We're going to get to a break here. When we come back on the other side, we'll do some previews and some projections. You are in the gun. For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
It's like the Blue Lot, but with better gifts. All the cool kids are hanging out at itgfootball.com. Check it out.
Back in the gun. Thanks to our buddy Sean Mariner for hanging out with us there for the first part of the show. Make sure you're giving him some love on Twitter at Big Daddy Mariner, getting all the good stuff directly from the source there. It is time now here in this program. Every single week, we make predictions. We make projections. We will start with the projections. We preview some marquee matchups around the top 25 and the Big 12. What Vegas thinks we think. We'll pull up the graphics now here. Top 25 games to focus on. It's a pretty loaded slate this week, Jed. What do we got?
Of course, top 25 now means college football playoff ranking, the top 25. In the SEC, taking a look. Still a lot of love for Alabama. Why not? They're on the road at Ole Miss. Alabama is number 9 in the playoff rankings at number 11 Ole Miss. Bama's heavily favored by 12. We're projecting, based on that, a 38-24 type win. Out in the Pac-12, big game between Washington and Oregon. Washington, I thought they'd get a little more love than they have, but they're sitting there at 25. Oregon all the way at number 6, 8 straight after that blowout loss to Georgia to start the season, as we talked about. Oregon, heavy favorite, expecting a shootout out on the coast. So we're looking at a 42-28 type Oregon win. That's our projection. And fun to dive into some group of 5 action here, guys.
Yeah.
We just talked about our boy Herb Hand down there with Gus Malzahn and the UCF Knights. They are on the road at Tulane, the same Tulane team that upset K-State earlier in the year. 2 teams ranked in the college football playoff ranking top 25. Tulane, a slight favorite. We're looking at a close game, 28-27 type game. Tulane knocking off UCF, who, by the way, knocked off Cincinnati not long ago. So getting interesting in the group of 5.
First, I saw a statistic. First time Tulane has played in a top 25 matchup since the 40s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's been a while since Tulane's been in one, like where both they've played ranked teams, obviously they've been ranked, but where it was, both in the top 25.
If I'm not mistaken, this year's the first time they've been ranked since like Rich and Tommy were there in 98.
I think so.
I think I saw that like a month ago.
So yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
Big 12 slate here. It's getting down to the nitty gritty. It's crunch time. Only 3 games left for some separation amongst the contenders for the conference championship game. What are we looking at across the Big 12, Jed?
I pull it up. 4 games outside of West Virginia that we want to get into here. Iowa State on the road, the struggling Oklahoma State Cowboys. What's going on with the Pokes? Iowa State slight favorite in Stillwater. We're looking at, of course, points at a premium because Iowa State, that's the law. 24-23 type game. Iowa State's our projection. K-State on the road at Baylor. This is a good battle between 2 good football teams. K-State ranked number 19 in the playoff rankings. Baylor is actually slightly favored. We're looking at a projection of 28-24, Baylor over K-State. Texas Tech hosting Kansas. Texas Tech favored at home by 4. Again, expecting a shootout. In Lubbock, we're projecting a 35-31 style win for the Red Raiders. And then in Austin, the game of the week, maybe in college football, guys. TCU at number 4 in the playoff rankings on the road at DKR at 9-0 to take on the 6-3 Texas Longhorns, which sit at number 18 in the poll. Texas is a 7-point favorite at home. Obviously, they play their best football at home. Big win on the road last week, but they're a different team at DKR. So based on that and the over-under in the mid-60s, we're projecting, not picking, projecting a 35-28 type Texas win. Of course, Gary Patterson, you got to figure he's going to play a central role in this thing. He had all that success with a 7-3 record in the last 10 matchups against Texas. Now he is an analyst for the Longhorns going against his former team. So that's the storyline in this one.
It's a nice analyst to have there on staff, I tell you.
A little bit, yeah. A little bit.
That's the game day game this week as well, too. You turn on your television Saturday morning to watch Pat McAfee and the boys, and they will be down there deep in the heart of Texas. All right, so those are the projections that we make as Owen laughs at me for my singing voice there. I mean, listen, I could have been on stage at Schmitt's Saloon back in the day, all right? I lay down a tune for you. Those are
first thing those guys from Oklahoma, not to interrupt, Wes, first thing they said today, doesn't he own a bar? They were asking about Owen. Because it started like this. It was Teddy Lehman, former Oklahoma player, okay, and Gabe Eichert, former Oklahoma player. I think they both dabbled in the NFL. So this interview starts, and the first thing they said was, hey, guess who he's doing a podcast with? And this is like Gabe asking Teddy, and he's like, who? And he's like, Owen Schmitt. What? Doesn't he own a bar or something? He's like, you're doing a podcast with that guy? It takes a lot of nerve. Does he ever headbutt you or anything in the podcast? There's blood all over his face in the podcast. So you're a legend in the state of Oklahoma. Yeah.
That's great.
I love it.
They remember you.
I love it. I absolutely love it. We got some those are our projections that we make every single week. We've got some predictions that we do as well too. Time to pull up the standings though before we get into this week's predictions. And gentlemen, as we take a look at the standings right now, I just got to say it's lonely at the top.
We're group of 5, Owen. I mean, that's here. This is Wes and his SEC Big Ten nonsense, and here I am in the Sun Belt, and you in the Mountain West, and we're battling it out.
I don't even want to talk.
For those who can't see this, we probably should provide some perspective.
Yes.
On audio.
Paint the picture, Jed.
Based on our scoring system. In case the producer hasn't pulled it up, please do so. Wes with 37 points to date through week 10. Owen with 21, Jed with 20. So
Jed has been climbing out of the cellar here the last couple of weeks.
He has.
I'm
He has.
consistently underachieving. Is what I'm doing. A lot of singles I'm stacking on top of each other. Like I said, Mountain West versus Sun Belt we got going here. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, the good news is you can only be as good as your last performance. So let's get into it for this week. See if we can right some wrongs here, at least for some people on the show. Jed, you go first. Your signal caller of the week. Which quarterback in the conference will throw for the most passing yards? Who you got?
All right. I did tinker with JT, but I didn't want to curse him for all the shortcomings Oklahoma's had defensively. But I didn't want to curse him. So instead, I'm going with Max Duggan on the road in this big showdown at DKR against the Texas Longhorns. I think the cream's going to rise to the top in these big games. I think Max Duggan will do that. I think Quentin Johnston's going to do some big things against that Texas secondary. I expect a lot of points back and forth. So I'm going to go with Max Duggan pulling the trigger for that Sonny Dykes offense in Austin against the Longhorns to throw for the most yards in the Big 12 this week.
The big runaway beer truck, Owen Schmitt, down the sideline. He gives us his runaway beer truck every single week. Which running back in the conference is going to run?
He has a very complicated relationship with this guy, right?
Is going to rush for the most yards in the conference. Owen, are you going back to the well?
I'm digging deep, and I'm throwing a Hail Mary here. Okay. Big week last week. I think he had 224 on the ground. All right. He was dead to me. Okay. But he's come back he's coming back to life.
Rising like a phoenix.
Yes. Rising like a phoenix from the ashes.
God, that's Devin Neal's music.
Devin Neal is going to have a day in Texas versus Texas Tech. The third rushing defense in the land. I'm hoping he has another big day like he did the week before.
Third from the bottom, Neal, right?
Yes, third from the bottom. Devin, don't let me down, brother.
You know what he is, Wes? Owen and Devin Neal. Back in college, of course, it was a lot longer ago for me than it was for you. But everybody in their group and in their circle of friends had that pair, that couple.
Yep.
All right. That they were constantly fighting, they were constantly breaking up, they were constantly screaming at each other. They'd break up for a couple of days,
making life a drag for everybody else.
Holding hands. You're like, wait a minute, I thought you broke up here, and you just can't keep. They broke up like every other week, and that's Owen and Devin Neal. That's what it is. Yeah.
I mean,
that was our buddies Luke and Jen. Hope they're not listening right now.
So Owen,
they're both married to other people. It all worked out
well. Luke or Jen.
It's Devin. Come on, brother. Do me a good one here. I need some points. And I know. Well, here's the thing. He has been underutilized, in my opinion, most of the season. They just haven't used him very much. He's gotten kind of limited carries. I don't know. Obviously, some sort of offensive game plan. Last week, he ran the house. So, and he had, both in passing, he had like 338 total yards.
Yes, totally.
You know what I mean? So, he did something stupid last week. So I'm just like, feed the guy the rock, man. Give him some love. Plus, obviously, since losing their quarterback, they've needed a guy to really step up as that massive playmaker. And I'm just thinking like he's got to be the guy. So. I'm putting the cherry on top this week, Devin. Go get you some, big boy.
This is going to end in a Taylor Swift song. I just know it, Jed.
I'm hoping he's going to end next week.
This is going to end in a Taylor Swift song. Owen and Devin, you'll never have to be alone. I'm going with the Iowa State Cyclones before this gets off the rails completely. I'm going with the Iowa State Cyclones as my defense of the week. They have been humming on defense these last couple weeks. They are in Oklahoma, in Stillwater there against State, against the Cowboys, and it's a state-on-state crime that's about to happen. Oklahoma State, I tell you what, I mean, they've done a heck of a 180. At one point this season, I thought they were going to win the conference. I thought they were the best team in the Big 12. I thought they had a chance to maybe even potentially go to the playoff. They are unraveling a little bit, so much so that Iowa State is actually favored in Stillwater. I'm going back-to-back weeks here. They worked for me last week, so might as well stick with them. I'll go with the Iowa State Cyclones for my defense of the week.
Tough to argue against that after what I saw Saturday up close and personal.
They're playing good football.
They sure are. They're shrinking the game. They're taking the air out of it. They're facing an offense that's trying to find itself once again. I don't understand what's going on with Oklahoma State. They got some questions to answer. Of course, they got talent in the key spots and might be able to answer it quickly, but I'm not going to bet against an Iowa State defense.
Yeah, same here. And that's why I'm picking them. We're going to get to a break here. When we come back on the other side, it's time to deep dive into the Oklahoma Sooners. Who's got the edge in the air, on the ground, special teams, intangibles. We'll break it all down for you when we return. It's ITG.
Game day got you on the go? We get it. GoMart is here to keep you going all season long with stores throughout our home state. We're a proud West Virginia-owned company, and our friendly staff is committed to serving our communities. From fuel to freshly brewed coffee and snacks, a stop at GoMart to cover your game day needs is always a touchdown. Plus, GoMart Rewards members earn points with each purchase to redeem for discounts on gas and free items. So stop by, start saving, and stay on the go with GoMart.
If you enjoy In the Gun, you'll love ITGFootball.com. Spread the word. Tell an ear to tell an ear. ITGFootball.com.
It's time to talk a little Oklahoma Sooners. They head to Mountaineer Field, Milan Puskar Stadium, Saturday at high noon. It's time now to get into the breakdown here. Owen's laughing. He's always laughing. He's always giggling. He's always throwing me off here Owen laughs at me when I try and get real professional and serious in these intros and outros, and then it throws me off. And I tell you what, Big O. Edge in the air, edge on the ground, edge in special teams and intangibles. It's how we start our previews every single week when we talk specifically about the Mountaineers' upcoming opponent. We'll start in the air with the signal caller. Jed, which direction you going here?
Let's start again. We break it down: our offense, their defense, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, when you look at the attack in the air, West Virginia obviously a much better team in Morgantown than it has been on the road for a host of reasons. The question is, you start with this: the physicality of Bryce Ford Wheaton. Is he going to bring it? Is it going to be one of the games where he does, or one of the games where he doesn't? 15 contested catches at his best. He's number 3 in the country. That's the value he brings to the table. Is that what we're going to see? Is KP going to bring it? Is Sam James going to bring it? Are we going to continue to see the toughness of Reese Smith? Or are we going to have answers for what they try to do? Here's some numbers that might put a little spring in your step, guys. We know that everybody plays better at home than they do on the road. Almost everybody, okay? West Virginia, that's an extreme difference. When you look at our production offensively at home, in points scored per game and total yards per game, we rank number 9 in the country in games played at home. We're 9th in scoring and total yards offensively. So that's a big deal. Now, when you look at JT, bear in mind, this isn't the first time JT has faced a Brent Venables defense, right? Last year at Georgia, in the season opener, he had that lat injury. A lot of people felt he shouldn't have played. So he was playing with that flak jacket on, Owen. He was playing in a very limited capacity because of that lat injury. It was aggravated. But in the season opener against Clemson, they won that rock fight 10-3. And he was 22 of 30. It was check down. Only threw for 135 yards. But he wasn't at full strength. He didn't play the next week after that game. He had to recover from it. So it's going to be interesting to see. Okay, he's seen the types of looks that Venables will throw at you. And so now as he's studying tape this week, he has a frame of reference from between the lines on the field to draw from. And I think that's kind of interesting. And when you look at what they do defensively, first of all, defensively, they're 9th in sacks. Okay. But I think that's a little misleading. They're in the middle of the pack in pass defense, but they're 9th in sacks. So I'll double back to that when we talk about the run game as well. But they have 136 quarterback pressures. They have almost 100 quarterback hurries. So they're impacting the play. They're just not getting home with the sacks. And then when you look at what they're doing offensively, first of all, they're a fundamentally different team with Dylan Gabriel behind center. Don't pay attention to the Texas game. By and large, most of the TCU game when they got blown out, he didn't play the better part of that game. He didn't play at all against Texas. When he's behind center, they're a different football team. Now, what happened last week he got picked off 3 times. Now, he's a small guy in stature, a shorter guy. Those 3 interceptions were all deflected footballs. And when you're playing a shorter guy, when you know this, hands in the air, right? You can impact the play in a lot of ways. And if you can deflect the ball and put it up for grabs and force a turnover, all the better. That's some of the success that Baylor had last week against him. Now, we talked about this when we previewed Oklahoma back in August. Jeff Lebby, what he does offensively, there's a lot of creativity to it. This is a guy who spent some time on Art Briles' air raid staff at Baylor when they had those wide formations, the up-tempo offense. The tempo is a huge part of what they do. He had success in doing some of those things. He had a balanced attack at UCF, spent it with when he was down there with Heupel, spent the last couple of years with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Everywhere he's been, he's moved the football and scored points. Well, this is interesting to me in that his quarterback in 2019 at Central Florida was Dylan Gabriel, who he's obviously been reunited with at Oklahoma. So the B plot to me this week is you have two quarterbacks in this game, both of which previously played for their coordinator in 2019 at a different school, JT at USC with Graham, and Dylan Gabriel at UCF with Jeff Lebby, reunited with their coordinators this year, trying to light that old flame and get some offenses moving. So that's interesting to me, but the tempo is going to play a huge part of this. Okay. They're a big play offense. They'll get you on your heels, 30 plus. When it comes to plays of 30 plus yards, they have 18 completions, which is good for third in the Big 12. They got guys like Marvin Mims, populating the perimeter. He's dangerous. But that tempo, guys, they ran 100 plays against Kansas and had 701 yards. When you watch the Kansas tape, it looked a whole lot like they were running the same speed Texas Tech did against us. So buckle up and brace yourself. Now, bear in mind, when you're running that style of offense, especially when you just implemented it this fall and you're trying to run it, that sometimes leads to a lot of penalties, a lot of false starts. You're not quite set, a lot of holdings. You're running more snaps. There's going to be more penalties and shortcomings. They're the most penalized team in the Big 12. But when you look at what West Virginia has done on the defensive side, the good news is we're probably a little better at large than people might think against the pass. We're 8th in the Big 12. But then when you look at it against league competition, we're 10th in the Big 12. Charles Woods, we're not quite entirely certain what's going on with his health. He was dinged up at Iowa State. We did have 4 sacks against these guys last year against Bill Bedenbaugh's offensive line. Of course, Bedenbaugh was retained. So maybe that's something to keep an eye on. I definitely think we're going to find a way to pressure them. But I just think there's too many questions with what's going on the back end with West Virginia, with Charles dinged up. I do like what Dylan Gabriel can do. Marvin Mims is dangerous. I'm going to give the edge in the air to Oklahoma.
Big O, do you concur?
Yeah, I concur. I think they just got Billy Bowman back, I believe, and he's been playing solid ball in their secondary. And we just got so many questions in our secondary right now. It's going to be hard. And like you said, Dylan Gabriel, rough goes it last week, but when he gets on and he can make those explosive plays, look out, right? They're a completely different offense. So I completely agree with Jed on that deal.
Yeah, I'll make it a clean sleep. Oh my goodness, I can't talk. A clean sweep here. I'll go with Oklahoma edge in the air as well too. Everything you gentlemen said, I'll just distill down to this. I give Gabriel a slight edge over JT. I give their secondary a definitive edge. I know they're struggling too, but I give their secondary an edge over ours. That's the difference to me. I go Oklahoma in the air. Signal caller, back to you. How about on the ground? Who's got the advantage?
Well, in the air, I expect a bounce back from JT. I did consider going that direction because of that. I expect big things from JT. When you look at Oklahoma's ground game, they lead the Big 12, 220 yards a clip. Eric Gray, 6 out of the 9 games he's played this year, and he's been over 100 yards, 3 straight games over 100 yards. Last week, and this is the part that scares me, last week, Gabriel ran for a career high against Baylor, 70 yards. And he's nimble enough to do that, the type of athleticism that he can escape, maybe move the sticks on a 3rd down or 2. That kind of alarms me. It kind of scares me. I think it's creative what Lebby does. Again, Bill Bedenbaugh's still there coaching up that offensive line. It's a pretty even distribution with what they do with Gray between their gap scheme and their zone scheme. So it's a lot to prepare for. And then when you look at West Virginia defensively, again, middle of the pack. At times we've had some answers, at times we haven't. We're 4th in the Big 12 against the rush. I think we're going to have our hands full against this attack. and the West Virginia offense when you're trying to run the football. The best news for me, first of all, we're running for 208 yards a game at home, and we're averaging 5.2 yards a carry at home. We're getting Tony Mathis back. We struggled against these guys last year in Norman. Couldn't get it clicking up front. 67 yards on the ground. Nobody remembers that more than Zach Frazier. What we think when we think of last year's loss in Norman, what do we think of? The snap, right?
Yep.
Tell me somebody that wants to make amends more than Zach Frazier. I expect Zach Frazier to rally that group and rally that room and bring a premium effort. I think that's going to be a big deal. I think Tony Mathis coming back is going to be a big deal. And when you look at Oklahoma defensively, last in the Big 12 against the run, giving up 200 yards a game. Here's what ends up happening, guys. They lead the Big 12 in TFLs, but they're ninth in sacks. Now, of course, sacks count as tackles for loss, right? Normally, when you lead a conference in TFLs, you're also toward the top of that conference in sacks. But they're ninth in the Big 12 out of 10 teams in sacks, and they lead the Big 12 with 68 TFLs. They have 51 of those 68 are non-sack tackles for loss. What's that tell me? They're very aggressive in shooting the gaps on the run fits. Sometimes they hit home for those TFLs. Sometimes they don't. Just as often they don't. They've given up the most 10-yard runs in the Big 12 because very often they miss those run fits. They're aggressive. They're learning a new scheme. And if you've ever studied what Brent Venables does defensively, now they do have a coordinator in Ted Root, but I think that's a coordinator by title. I mean, this is Brent Venables' defense, right? When you study what he does defensively, it's pretty complicated. It's pretty high end. It's kind of NFL level stuff, and maybe it's a lot to chew on for those kids. Sometimes they look like they're reacting instead of just attacking, and that's not good for a defense to do that. I think they might have too much on their plate in terms of the checks and the opportunities, the checks and the options they have against the different looks that you provide. But as a result of their struggles against the run, as a result of the struggles when they miss fits and miss their gap and allow some big plays and get you to find some rhythm, that's exactly what we were missing a week ago. The ability to hit a 10, 15-yard run and find some rhythm by staying on the field. Guys, I'm going to give a slight edge to West Virginia on the ground, in part because I think the return of Tony Mathis is going to give us a big boost, but also because Oklahoma has struggled mightily against just about everybody they faced on the ground this year.
Jed, I mean, I do agree with you somewhat on the West Virginia side with Tony Mathis coming back, but I just don't know how, well he's going to come back. I don't know if it's something where is he 100%? Is he coming back at 80%? Eric Gray's been having days on the ground. It's very close for me in this aspect. I did give the go ahead to Oklahoma just for the fact that I know Eric Gray's been steaming it up, and with Tony coming back off an injury, I don't know how well he'll respond. Maybe he'll respond great. I don't know.
Let me ask you something, Owen. Well, before we toss to Wes, because you'd be able to give a pretty good answer on this. His injury was a hyperextended elbow. Okay.
Yeah.
So from the waist down, he hasn't missed a rep, right? It was all a ball security issue. He was trying to get back on the field in Lubbock in the second half. He just had the weakness in the elbow. So it's an upper body elbow injury. Ball security was the concern. Now that he's back to at least strong enough to have that ball security, it was never an issue. He's been repping in practice. It was never an issue of missing reps or slowing down or putting too much weight on one ankle or the other. Do you think that matters in terms of, in other words, not all injuries are created equally for running backs, right?
Yeah, I'll say this. As far as so whatever, coaching high school kids, right, how to tackle, or when I tell them pressure points, right, wrists, elbows, right, hips, knees, those are kind of, in my opinion, things that will plague running backs. So like you said, obviously he's going to be in shape. He's going to have the conditioning still. It was just an elbow injury. My thing is he going to take a hat off the elbow and be right back where he was, last game? Is that going to create another ball security issue for us? That's kind of, I guess, where my head is there. I just, I know we've done well at home. Okay. And I want to root for my boys, right? I want us to do great, but part of our success was having all three in the backfield. And having CJ go down, and now he's out for the season, and putting the brunt on Tony. And Tony's had great games, just him, right? I just don't know. It's just so close for me. Eric Gray, like I said, I feel like he's a little more of a
Justin will pitch in too, but you're right.
Yeah, and he's going to, and he did well last week.
All things considered.
You know what I mean? He did well last week. He did some good things. In the press conference with Neil Brown, he was happy about how he stepped up with the reps he did get, and he especially on the pass protection area as well. It's just so even.
Makes sense.
Where, you know what I mean? And where, like I said, Eric's just kind of had the hot hand right now. I went with Oklahoma.
Got you, Wes.
I'm going with Oklahoma as well too. Eric Gray's been humming. We know that the Mountaineers have capable dogs, capable horses in the backfield, but which ones are going to show up any given week has been a little bit of a mixed bag. Both defenses have struggled to stop the run. Here was the deciding factor to me, though, gentlemen, is last week, very convincingly so, might I add, Jed laid out a great analogy correctly and backed up statistically of how crap the Iowa State run game was. Like historically.
We came roughing the kicker away from that exact thing happening, because for over 3 quarters it did.
They ran for 172 yards. All right.
Yeah.
You can seek seek comfort over there, Mike Tomlin, but they went for 172 yards on the ground to our 76. They more than doubled us up. So if the worst rushing team that Jed Allen Poe has ever dissected
since 2019 West Virginia
did that to us. Well, okay, since 2019 West Virginia.
Yeah.
I'm going with Eric Gray in Oklahoma. You mentioned Bill Badenbaugh. That's a big part of this to me, too. That offensive line is always ready to go. They've always got studs on that O-line. And we've struggled as a defense to stop the run. On offense, we've been inconsistent. We've had some really good games running the football. Baylor, TCU. We've had some really good games on the ground. We've also had some nothing burgers. And I'm giving the slight edge to Oklahoma because of some of those things.
Well, it's almost like, guys, I remember standing on the sidelines last week, and as the fourth quarter started in Ames, I was sitting there thinking, it's not that often that a team looks exactly like you thought they'd look. And their running game looked exactly like they couldn't do anything. And then the next thing you know, blocked punt, missed run fit, 36-yard run, which is almost what they had all day for 3 quarters. It was a completely different game. I mean, in other words, I didn't walk out of there thinking, wow, they're better on the ground than I thought. No, I walked out of there thinking, yep, that was exactly what I thought for 46 minutes. And then we missed a run fit, missed a tackle. And I know
those last 14 minutes count. And I got to argue they count even more than the first 46.
I'll lean on the 44 plays instead of the 2. That's what I'll say. I always look at it like that.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
The 2 count, but so do the 44. So what are the odds? The 2 replicating themselves or the 44 replicating themselves? I don't necessarily look at it like, again, we're 4th in the Big 12 against the run. They're 10th. So to equate those 2 things is somewhat misleading, but I do think it's difficult to make an argument against Eric Gray. I do. That's a compelling argument.
They're averaging 60 yards more per game on the ground than we are.
But you look at last week much differently than I do. I look at last week looking at it like, wow, they were exactly what I thought they'd be, and we missed 2 run fits.
Maybe that's just, Jed, we've joked about this before. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, where for so long it was run the football and play defense, the Pittsburgh Steeler way, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you need those first 46 minutes to get those last 14 minutes, to wear them down, to have that moment where the dam really breaks. But that's a different conversation. We could argue about that here.
And that's not what
next
happened.
Hour.
I've seen that happen a million times, and that's not what happened.
Well, hey, you were on the sideline, so I will take your word for it. But I'm still going with the Sooners here on the ground, baby.
It's hard to argue against it. It is, but in Zach Frazier, I trust. I think he's going to be
hey,
an angry man.
listen, I want to, when we go to record this episode next week, I want to be wrong. I'm hoping I have no voice still when we record because I'm hooting and hollering and celebrating the first victory over Oklahoma in the Big 12 era for our Mountaineers.
Gray's playing good football, man.
He's playing real good football.
Playing good football.
Real good football. In fact, he's less than 100 yards away from hitting 1,000 on the season.
Yeah.
Let's hope that he has to wait another week to hit 1,000 on the season. Special teams intangibles as we wrap this up. Jed, where are you going?
Again, our specialists are playing well. Casey Legg's playing good football. All of a sudden, we have a freshman punter that's playing lights out and just pinning people every time we turn around. But I think that Michael Turk is special. He's a field flipper. We kind of got a specialist that, will pin you if given the opportunity under the right circumstances, the right field position. I mean, he's just a boomer that'll flip the field and grab some hidden yardage for you. And he's been that throughout his career. And when you got guys like Marvin Mims comes to mind as a return specialist, but Oklahoma, I mean, how many times have we seen this happen with these big brand teams? I think back to the Kevin White game in 2014. That was a kickoff return right before the half. I mean, that's what these Oklahomas or LSUs of the world are known for. That's what they're good at, is they have such depth. They recruit so well that they have 4 stars that just happen to be freshmen and populating their coverage units, their return units. That makes them dangerous by their nature. Now, I did have some pause in terms of which way I'd tilt here, just because I do think it matters to this West Virginia football team that we're 0-9 against Oklahoma as a member of the Big 12, and we desperately want to become the first West Virginia team to claim victory as a member of the Big 12 against these guys, and the first team to beat them since Big O's team.
Over an unranked Oklahoma team.
Yeah, over an unranked. And it's the first time Oklahoma has ever faced us in the series.
In 13 years, I think, yeah.
It's the first time in the history of the series. Yeah. They faced us in 1978. They were ranked. 82, they were ranked. So, I mean, under any circumstances, I will take a win over Oklahoma at this point.
Yes, I don't care if they're 0-11 or what 0-10.
Exactly, and I just don't know if that's enough. I think that I would give the tilt because of the depth and the talent on the transition units to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that's well said. Owen, we making it a clean sweep here?
Yeah, I think the last loss we've had, we're being outscored 120-55. I mean, it's just, that's my intangible there.
They've won 30 of their last 35 on the road, I think, as a program, Oklahoma has. So, that's another intangible. Yeah, but.
Well, here's a final intangible. I will change my answer to WVU here under one condition, and that is if the runaway beer truck is in Morgantown on Saturday and we're drinking beers together, brother.
Oh, that is an intangible.
The spirit of the beer truck, will be in Morgantown on Saturday.
Spirit of the Big O and the Big Uhler out there.
The spirit not only will be there, but the physical spirit as well.
You're going to be there?
I'll be there, Jed.
I'm flipping too. Intangibles, West Virginia. I'm going there too. Right there. That's all it took.
All right.
Well, I'm redoing the graphic, sending it to producer.
The graphic right now. The reworked graphic.
Yeah. I'm switching.
Of Owen and I getting together and seeing if we can't duplicate that Thursday night Baylor magic one more time here as we we'll head to the penultimate home game of the season.
That makes things very interesting.
For your West Virginia Mountaineers. We're going to do our part. That's all that we can promise is we're going to do our part.
That is the ultimate intangible. Now, you guys do recognize, okay, what happens if we win? Oh, and you have no choice.
K-State?
K-State?
Although, hold on.
What happens?
Hold on. Now, see, Jed, here's the thing, though. You got to be careful, right? I'm going to use an adult analogy here, kids, all right? The earmuffs. We don't want to blow our load here, Jed, all right? So what I'm thinking, Owen, and you can be the final decider on this, is if the magic continues in Oklahoma, we freaking save it and bottle it up till Labor Day weekend, and we head up to Happy Valley to take on those Penn Staters.
Hey, one time, when I was playing for the Eagles, this is just when I got on the team, I was captain for a game. Right. Well, we won that game. Okay. So then they let me be captain again. We won that game. And then we got to a point, Andy was like, dude, you're a captain. I was like, why am I? He's like, you haven't lost yet. He's like, you haven't lost yet.
I love it.
How long did it go?
They went 3 games. 3 games, and then I wasn't a captain again.
And by Andy, of course, he's not talking about Andy Johnson, who delivers his beer.
Oh no, he's talking about Big Red.
Big Red. Yep.
The Big Red machine himself.
What made me think about that is I just cleaned out my storage unit in Morgantown, and I pulled out when you were a captain and you won the game, they gave you the captain's picture. Yeah, and I had those 3 pictures, and I said, "Oh man,
very cool.
That'd be
Dude, you got to bring that to the next episode."
Yeah.
Show us that. Yeah.
Hang one of those up in the background.
Yeah, sure. I'll put that in the background.
Yeah.
So there's our edge segment in terms of our previews here. When we come back, we'll look back at that frustrating loss last year in Norman that we've referenced a couple times, do a little tail of the tape, and give some projections before we get out of here. Owen Schmitt, Jed Drenning, I'm Wesley Uhler, and you are in the gun. For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. Final segment here of our Oklahoma preview. Sometimes it's important to look back while you're looking ahead at the same time. Jed, these teams met last year in Norman. You mentioned how the Mountaineers 0-9 against Oklahoma in the Big 12 era. We've had some close ones, 2012, 2018, like we referenced earlier with our buddy Big Daddy. But this was the one in Norman that felt like really slipped away. What do you remember? We'll pull up the graphic now from that 16-13, that frustrating last-second field goal win for Oklahoma last year.
Yeah, actually, Wes, as I understand it, in the long and storied history of Oklahoma Sooner football, that is the only game ever in which they had a walk-off game-winning field goal.
Wow.
Yeah, strangely enough.
I can think of like 3 or 4 from WVU in my lifetime alone.
That's the same thing I thought when I heard that. But I remember we took the
we had one this year. We had one this year. Well, I guess Baylor, that wasn't the last play of the game.
It wasn't really a walk-off, but
yeah.
Anyway, not the opening kickoff, but on our first possession, we went 75 yards and kind of just methodically marched down, distributing it to several different skill guys and
Garrett Green.
I mean, it was a drive for the time capsule, and we went up 7-0. But little did we know that would be our only touchdown. Points were very much at a premium that night. And I mean, they had answers for what we were doing offensively. We had answers for what they were doing offensively. And then, of course, I remember that the game was hanging in the balance, tied at 13. We were driving in the fourth quarter. And I mean, we've talked about this before. There's certain ways that you can push the envelope defensively, what you get away with, what you don't. But throughout the course of the game, there was some chatter that Oklahoma's front seven was kind of messing with our cadence. Okay. So I still feel that directly contributed to that snap that Zach had. I mean, here we were driving for what looked to be the go-ahead field goal, if not the go-ahead touchdown. And then we had the bad snap that knocked us out. We had to punt it, and then we pinned them down at the 8. And even then, this was one of those games we always cite from last year that we were one defensive stop away at the end of the game at a critical time of maybe it turning out differently. And, Spencer Rattler, who we held in check for the better part of the night, comes in starting at his own 8 with, I think, 3 minutes and change left, and ends up driving them down for a chip shot field goal. I think they drove down to the 13. Yeah. And it was just like death by 1,000 cuts watching that from the sidelines. And that was an incredible environment. It always is, the Palace on the Prairie. It was lively, it was energetic, and we overcame all that and came that close, just a whisker away. We couldn't finish the job. and watching that thing sail through. But how strange is that? And all the wins they've had, one of the winningest programs in history, that's the only walk-off game-winning field goal they've ever had. At least they said that, to their knowledge. Oklahoma Sports Information says, to their knowledge, that's the only time that's ever happened. But that's what I remember about it. Tough loss.
Yep. That was a tough one. That certainly was. That one
held
that's
Oklahoma,
one
by the way, to their
stings.
fewest points. We held Oklahoma to their fewest points since 2014 in that game. Fewest points in 7 years. So great job of the defense. But anyway.
Well, Jed, taking a look at the tail of the tape, do you want to start WVU offense, WVU defense? Where you want to go first here?
Yeah, let's start with the offense. West Virginia's offense against Oklahoma's defense. I'm going to jump to the same spot with both. But as you look at it, you know, when you compare these things and contrast them, it's a pretty even matchup, okay? In terms of strengths on strengths, weaknesses on weaknesses. But one of the things I want to jump to is look at red zone touchdown efficiency or touchdown percentage. You know, we started the year pretty strong in that capacity, but we've dropped to number 7 in the league at 63%. But Oklahoma has struggled mightily defensively throughout the course of the season. That's been one of their major shortcomings on the defensive side. They are 10th in the league in terms of when you breach the red zone, allowing a touchdown instead of holding you to a field goal or holding you to nothing. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I'll double that back when we switch out to the other side here, but that's something to keep an eye on. And the other question I have is, can we bounce back from a third down efficiency standpoint? Our worst performance by far this year was last week at Iowa State. We were 2 of 12. That dropped us from 50% down to 45. I mean, look up top, guys. I mean, we were toward the top of the league in points per game and total yards per game, and it doesn't take much. You know, a bad outing, and all of a sudden we're 8th in scoring and 9th in total yards. But keep an eye on when the field shrinks in the red zone, and then from a situational football standpoint on third down, let's watch those closely as always. But I think that's going to go a long way toward determining what plays out here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, when you look at the WVU offense versus the Oklahoma defense, looks like some areas for both units to make hay.
Yeah.
And how does that all shake out over the course of 60 minutes? Obviously, will go a long way in determining what happens on Saturday. Other side of the coin here, the equation, Mr. Drenning, WVU defense versus the Oklahoma O.
Again, let's jump down right to it. Red zone touchdown percentage. You know, West Virginia defensively for the better part of the season has occupied that 10 spot, allowing a lot of touchdowns. Again, what was last year a major strength for West Virginia. We were one of the best red zone defenses the Big 12 seen in 7 years, I think, what Jordan Leslie's defense did last year. But the turnover in personnel, the injuries, whatever you want to call it, the production has not been there. So we climbed to number 9. Oklahoma defensively holds down that number 10 spot. And the problem is, as you might expect, Owen, from a football team that's pretty good at running the football, when the field shrinks in the red zone, they're pretty good at punching it in as well. And that also helps that they got a quarterback who's just slippery enough to maybe make some plays with his legs down there. They're 3rd in the Big 12 in reaching the end zone from an offensive standpoint. And then when you look at the battle on third down, they're 3rd offensively. Oklahoma is in converting third downs. We're middle of the pack and stopping them. Yeah, I mean, yards per play, we struggle. Yards per play, they're middle of the pack. I mean, it's really interesting to look back and forth across this. Okay. Like you said, there's opportunities, I think, in all these matchups, our offense, their defense, our offense, for one side or the other to make some progress. It's just going to be a function of which team can. Hopefully the home field can play an advantage and we can perform.
Indeed. Owen and I will be there doing our part. We'll perform. Now will the boys perform? That is the question. Jed, our projection here, what Vegas thinks we think, not what we're predicting, but what the odds makers are projecting. What does it look like for Saturday at high noon in Morgantown?
Oklahoma has hovered, it depends on where you look, around 8 points as a favorite, over under in the mid 60s, 66.5 or so. So again, what I try and do is take that number and not do the exact math, but come up with a football type score. So instead of 36-28, I kind of went with 37-28, which seemed more football like, but that's our projection. Oklahoma 37-28 would be the projection based on the numbers.
Well, good thing Owen and I are good for an 11-point swing.
Absolutely.
Hey, we were home dogs before. We'll be home dogs again. It's hungry dogs running. I know.
We're gonna get complaints in the YouTube comments about somebody's eardrum busting right there.
I'll tell you what, we're gonna get
I apologize in advance.
We're gonna get complaints in our section as well too. I tell you what, between Owen and I, we make a lot of noise out there, and we stay hydrated. I mean, listen, that's what you always get. That's what you always get taught growing up, right? You got to stay hydrated. Hydration cannot be a factor. Well, we're making sure that we're doing our best there as well, too. One more time as we wrap this up, a big shout out to our friends at Bet Online. Make sure you're going to betonline.ag for all of your gambling needs throughout the rest of the college football season, college basketball, hockey, NFL, NBA. The World Cup starts in another week or two. It is a great time of year to be a sports fan. MMA, all that on there as well, too. betonline.ag for all of your gambling needs. Gentlemen, it was fun. Let's go get the Sooners. I don't care.
Day, baby. Killing here.
I don't care that it's a down year for Oklahoma. The history books will say that we finally got one against these jerks. So let's do it here before they
Let me tell you something.
To the SEC.
We all remember Major's run. And if you weren't there for it, you've heard about it a million times since. Major's run and that big win came against what team?
Penn State.
Penn State. What was Penn State's record?
They were undefeated, weren't they?
They were 5-6.
Oh, well, never mind.
So beat Oklahoma, and 30 years from now, people will simply remember you beat Oklahoma.
Well said by our guy, Jed. Just go beat Oklahoma. Go get it done. Reminder, itgfootball.com. If you want any merch, if you want to just rock and roll with everything we got going on there, it's a central place for it. Be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast, In the Gun podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You guys know the drill. All right, you're hip to all of this by now. Thanks to Sean Mariner for joining us earlier. Thanks again to all the veterans who have served this country. And we'll look forward to military appreciation as well as kicking some Sooner tail Saturday at Mountaineer Field. For the signal caller, Jed Drenning, and the runaway beer truck, Owen Schmitt, I'm Wesley Uhler. Take care now. Bye-bye then. We'll be back to break it all down for you on the next episode of ITG.